Live from KSAT 12, the news at 5:30 starts right now.
History made today. No president has ever dropped out of a re-election campaign this late in the game. After mounting pressure for President Joe Biden to end his re-election bid, today he did just that.
In a letter to the country posted on social channels, the 46th president of the United States told the country he believes it is in the best interest of the Democratic Party and of the country for him to end his re-election campaign and focus on fulfilling his duties as president for the rest of his term.
The president has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to be the Democratic nominee. The news comes as an increasing number of Democrats have called on him to end this re-election bid. Biden plans to talk about his decision and address the nation later this week.
Vice President Kamala Harris took little time responding to the president's endorsement, making it clear she is running to be the next president of the United States, saying in a statement she, quote, intends to earn and win the nomination, end quote.
And this is a whole lot to unpack, lots of questions pouring in. So we want to bring in Dr. John Taylor. He's the UTSA professor of political science. John, thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Happy to be here.
Hey, John, thanks for joining us on a Sunday. I know there's a lot going on, but I'm curious what your take is. I mean, just how historic is what we're witnessing today?
It is truly historic. I mean, as was mentioned at the top of the show, Joe Biden is the latest that any presidential candidate, any nominee, incumbent president especially, has withdrawn from the race. The last time something like this took place was back in 1968 when LBJ withdrew, but he withdrew during the Democratic primaries in March of 68. The only other thing we've seen that's come close to a withdrawal would be Thomas Eagleton, who was the Democratic nominee for vice president in 1972 under George McGovern. That was due to mental health issues. This is unprecedented.
Yeah, and obviously that immediate endorsement of the vice president. What are we thinking when it comes to someone being bold enough to really step up and take on that bid?
Well, I think Biden had complete confidence in her, and I think rightly so. I mean, he chose her for vice president, and for specific reasons why he chose her for vice president. She's tenacious, she's tough, she's shown her mettle on the campaign trail. It makes sense. Additionally, it's a case of she's been on the ticket during the Democratic primary season, which means that's why he endorsed her, because she's been his running mate. And so it's not like somehow she's an unknown quantity, far from it. This is why you're seeing so many Democratic office holders and groups beginning to coalesce already behind Kamala Harris's nomination.
You know, John, I had a Democratic source tell me a little bit earlier that he expects that Kamala Harris will have this sewn up by the end of this week. If so, who is her vice presidential pick? Who do you think is the favorite right now?
Boy, that's a great question, because I think there are several options. Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, Roy Cooper, the governor of North Carolina, even Kirsten Whitmer, the governor of Michigan. And one other choice I should note as well, Mark Kelly, U.S. Senator from Arizona. Any of them would be interesting candidates. Any of them I think would work well with the ticket. If you're looking for a candidate that is, quote, a younger face in the future of the Democratic Party, Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, might be the best choice. But a more interesting choice might be Mark Kelly. You're talking about NASA astronaut. You're talking about a U.S. Senator. You're talking about the husband of Gabby Giffords, who was a U.S. House member that was shot and nearly died as a result of an assassination attempt herself.
And we need to talk about the fact that the Democratic National Convention, 29 days away. The timing of this is critical. What do you think will be happening behind the scenes? Will this be a scramble? We know that there have been statements coming out that this will be organized. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, it's the Democratic Party. We can make jokes about how organized they are anyway, which is not necessarily very often very organized. That said, there are rules in place. It's not like Biden was somehow the nominee already. This is what makes a big difference. He had the delegates to win the nomination, but he's not officially the nominee yet. This actually gives a lot of breathing room and space for Kamala Harris to coalesce forces, to be able to coalesce all the people that were pledged to Biden, to get most of them, if not all of them, to support her, and then win the nomination.
What does this do for Republicans? Now the Trump-Vance ticket changes their target from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris. I mean, what do you expect to hear from Republicans in the coming days?
Virtually minutes after Biden made the announcement, there were a lot of reactions, angry reactions among Republicans, claiming that this was anti-democratic, what the Democrats had done. Some have said they're going to file lawsuits. The speaker, for goodness sakes, talked about how this was anti-democratic. We have to force the issue and force lawsuits. No, this is an internal political party thing. They have the right to do what they want to do. But it tells you a couple of things. One, it just changed the Trump-Vance campaign, and in particular their focus. But more importantly, the one issue that was really bothering voters, Biden's age and his mental acuity issues, are now squarely on Donald Trump.
So who do you think moving forward right now? Obviously, the convention coming up. Who is the voter that the Democrats need to focus on right now?
You got to be focusing on voters, lower middle class, still affected by grocery store prices and fast food restaurant prices. I'm concerned about their kids' future. We got to be concerned about the border. Kamala Harris, she was President Biden's, basically point person on the border. And I've already seen stuff on Twitter attacking her on the border. Although she can turn around and say, well, we had a plan in place, but you guys voted it down. So it'll be interesting to see that. I think you're going to see a huge focus on those usual swing states in the upper Midwest, North Carolina, Georgia, places like that.
Yeah, interesting. John Taylor, Dr. John Taylor, UTSA, Political Science Department. Always appreciate your time and your insight, John.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. All right. Now, obviously, reaction has been pouring in since the moment President Biden announced he's stepping aside this afternoon.
Yeah, former President Bill Clinton and Hillary releasing a joint statement praising Biden's decision. The pair added they'll be endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris's bid to receive the Democratic nomination, saying, quote, "We are honored to join the president in endorsing Vice President Harris and will do whatever we can to support her," end quote.
Former President Barack Obama also publicly thanking President Biden for his service to the country and his decision to withdraw his name from the race. Obama said he and Michelle are grateful for the work Joe Biden's accomplished in his 4 years in office and believes he has made the right decision to step aside. It's important to note former President Barack Obama has not announced an endorsement for any candidate to replace Biden as the Democratic nominee.
Now to some of the Republican reaction. Former President Donald Trump took to his social media platform, Truth Social, to comment on Biden's announcement. The Republican nominee posted that Biden was, quote, "never fit to run or serve as president," and that he plans to, quote, "remedy the damage if he gets reelected come November."
Governor Greg Abbott took to X to criticize the president's decision to endorse Kamala Harris. Abbott tweeted that he will need to, quote, "triple the border wall, razor wire barriers, and National Guard on the border." In another tweet, the governor said, quote, "today's announcement may not have happened without the disastrous debate," end quote.
House Speaker Mike Johnson also tried to capitalize on the chaos for Republicans by singing a different tune than Governor Abbott and former President Trump. In a statement posted to X, he says if Biden isn't fit to run for re-election, he isn't fit to continue serving as president. The House Speaker also added that the president must, quote, "resign the presidency immediately," end quote.
All right, switching gears really quickly and taking a look outside with live cam, you can see we have dark gray skies as we take a look out in northern Bexar County. We've seen some spotty downpours and even a few non-severe thunderstorms develop this afternoon across portions of the hill country of the southern Edwards Plateau. Briefly want to get you a check at Authority radar. Some of that activity mainly north of Highway 90, northern Uvalde County, Medina County, even near Bandera out there, closing in on Medina Lake. One of the noisier thunderstorms now on the northern Bexar, southern Kendall County line near Leon Springs, as well as the Dominion and Bernie area. This is going to continue to work its way farther south. We'll have a full check at your Authority radar, plus a look at rain chances into the upcoming week coming up a little bit later on in the newscast.
Thank you, Mia. And the speaker, not the only Republican saying he believes Biden isn't going far enough today.
Yeah, we talked to a local congressman not happy with the timing of this announcement, but also we talked to a man who knows Joe Biden personally. He weighs in next. Welcome back. We're continuing our coverage of President Joe Biden dropping out of the race, a man who first ran for federal office at the age of 29.
Yeah, we're getting a lot of local reaction this afternoon, including from a very vocal opponent of Biden and a local professor who knows the president personally. Zaria Oates joins us now. Zaria, Juan Sepulveda actually worked with and for Joe Biden.
Yes, Steve, he did. A historic day for him. I spoke with Trinity professor Juan Sepulveda a few hours ago. He worked under former President Barack Obama's administration and alongside President Joe Biden. Sepulveda says this was the right decision and also speaks on the timing of the announcement.
He did the right thing. Very, very difficult decision to make for him and his family. I don't think there's a right or wrong to it. I think you have a real personal piece here that had to kind of come into play. It had to be the president who had to kind of come to make this decision himself. And so I'm sure people could argue about, should it have happened 2 weeks ago? Should have happened earlier.
I also spoke with Republican Congressman Chip Roy. He has been outspoken on his thoughts about President Biden's mental fitness for office.
Everybody with eyes saw it in the debate. They've seen it since the debate. And Democrats have just been struggling with the box that they created for themselves by, frankly, keeping up the false pretense that the president of the United States was mentally cognizant enough to carry out the powers and duties of the office. So I'm not surprised. I think it's just a matter of Democrats trying to figure out what to do. And now they got to figure out how to get to what they mentioned. They got to figure out how to get people on a ballot.
In fact, the day after President Biden's debate, Congressman Roy filed a resolution calling on Vice President Kamala Harris to invoke the 25th Amendment. He was pushing for VP Harris to declare President Biden is unable to carry out his presidency. Steve.
Interesting listening to a Republican congressman say he's going to be watching the Democratic convention to see how they carry this whole thing out. But he also was critical of the timing on this whole thing. The timing
was a big deal, especially because a lot of people have said that, his debate performance, President Biden's debate performance wasn't perfect. It wasn't something that was ideal for the Democratic Party. And something else that Congressman Roy mentioned was that they want him to resign and resign now.
Right. And I think it's really important that you talk to somebody who knows the president personally, has worked with him. Obviously, Juan Sepulveda supports the president, but his entire administration, too. Did he talk about the immediate endorsement for him?
Yeah, it was interesting. Sepulveda, he has been somebody that we've spoken with before about things, and he doesn't always pick a side, but he kind of claimed Biden to be this hero, this person that was doing the right thing at the right time because there wasn't a better time for him to make this decision for himself. At least that's what Sepulveda is saying right now.
All right. Thanks for that insight, Zaria.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Thanks, Zaria. Let's continue coverage now with some more local reaction. We'll have it for you after the break. ABC and a lot of other outlets are talking about the outpouring of reaction all across America to President Biden's decision to step out of the race to the White House. Here in San Antonio, Mayor Ron Nirenberg, who's been a big supporter of the president, issuing a statement saying in part, quote, President Joe Biden will be remembered as one of the most transformational leaders in our nation's history, as well as a true friend to the working families of San Antonio. Because of his leadership in a time of crisis, nearly 65,000 San Antonians were able to stay in their homes during the pandemic. His willingness to stand up to special interests and cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month is a literal lifesaver in a city where 1 out of 6 are diabetic. He tackled infrastructure and climate change, creating jobs and making our world a little bit safer. And on a personal note, he stood with us in Uvalde and not only shared in our grief, but continued to show the courage to push for common sense reforms. He took the slings and arrows that come from stepping into the arena, and throughout, it all reminded us that strength of character matters. I'll forever be proud to call him a partner and a friend. Mayor Nirenberg also posted on X that he will be endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris as the Democratic nominee for president.
Former San Antonio Mayor and HUD Secretary Julian Castro, who also sought the presidency in 2020, also took to X to say that Biden deserves enormous credit for bringing the nation back from COVID, reinvigorating our economy, moving us forward to address climate change, among many other accomplishments. He goes on to call Biden an excellent president, and today he says Biden has shown that he's a true statesman. In his statement also, he endorsed VP Kamala Harris.
Julian's twin brother, Congressman Joaquin Castro, issuing his own statement saying American voters swept Joe Biden into office with faith in his vision for our nation. He goes on to say that Biden helped restore America's place as the leader of the free world. Castro calls the president's decision today a fulfillment of Biden's promise to be a bridge to the future and will work to help Kamala Harris's campaign.
The calls and the texts that I've gotten from everyday Americans here in Texas suggest that they're going to rally behind her as well to defeat Donald Trump. I was just at the grocery store a little while ago, and somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, we need to get behind Kamala Harris now."
And our Avery Everett jumped on a Zoom today with a couple of Democratic voters to get their take on Biden's decision. Larry Romo, a Democratic delegate, says it's time for the party to get behind Kamala Harris.
She's been loyal to the country. She's been loyal to President Biden. She's been loyal to the Democratic Party. So I'm pledging my support endorsement to Kamala Harris. There's a lot of good people. There's a strong bench of other people. Hopefully, we will get a great vice president candidate from that strong bench to support the ticket.
Romo and Sonia de la Garza Walker with Bear United Tejano Democrats both say they support the idea of Harris being the first woman president. More comments and reaction are pouring in by the second. And another look at Mia Montgomery's weather forecast when we return.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Want to get you the latest on your authority radar as we still do have some spotty storms and a few downpours, the most notable of which moving into far northwestern Bexar County. Some gusty winds upwards of 20 to 30 miles per hour, certainly possible. You can see it has weakened ever so slightly as of the last couple of scans here. Got some more of that rain-cooled air moving out ahead of these thunderstorms, which can act to weaken them a little bit, but still, Bernie, now the strongest of that storm, is south of you. Some heavy rain falling for places like Scenic Oaks, Leon Springs, even San Geronimo. This is working southbound and will cross over Highway 16 on the northwestern side of Bexar County near Helotes and the UTSA area, depending on how well it all holds together. We've seen a few storms that have weakened even more so out west near Concan, northern Kinney County. Another storm that's now starting to come to an end north of Lake Amistad, also north of the Del Rio area, and just a few more splash and dash downpours across the far southeastern reaches of our viewing area. I think a lot of this activity will weaken over the next couple of hours. Still a few spotty downpours possible by about 7 to 8 o'clock, but after the sun goes down, notice here on your futurecast by 10:30, a lot of this is going to wind down. I think most of us are going to be pretty quiet and dry as we sleep through the overnight. And throughout the first half of our Monday, more of the same is expected. Just a 20% chance for an isolated shower through 11 a.m. But watch what happens by Monday around lunchtime. A few downpours starting to develop mainly north of San Antonio, but better rain chances soon follow as early as tomorrow afternoon, and daily chances for scattered rain through Thursday, an atypical weather pattern for the last full week of July. By 3 p.m., we're starting to see scattered showers and storms develop mainly across portions of the hill country near Bernie, Kerrville, Lakey, as well as Rock Springs. This will also start to work its way farther off to the south. Notice your timing here. If this verifies, the evening commute tomorrow here in San Antonio could be a little messy with some reduced visibility and heavy rain in a few locations. So that's going to be something to check back in on over the next 24 hours. By tomorrow night, a lot of this working south of San Antonio. But we're not finished there. A 60% chance for rain continues Tuesday, Wednesday, and into Thursday. It's not going to be raining continuously in your backyard all day, every day, but definitely plan on keeping the umbrella handy because you'll likely need to use it a few times throughout the upcoming week. This is the catalyst behind this activity. High pressure moving farther off to the west. A low pressure system approaches the state of Texas, brings with it a frontal boundary that is expected to stall across central Texas. So when you combine that energy in place with more moisture, I think over the next 7 days, many locations will pick up at least an inch of rain with pockets of 2 to 4 certainly possible. We may need to monitor for a few minor flooding issues. At times, especially in those poor drainage and low-lying areas, your temperatures a little bit cooler this week with highs in the 80s. We'll be right back.
All of our time for now, a Biden special on him stepping down coming up next on ABC News.
And we'll see you back.